professionals. We are impact-driven. We are CFA Society Nigeria, a member society of the CFA Institute Global Network of Societies. Our mission is to promote the highest standard of practice in the Nigerian financial services industry and provide a vibrant community for our members. The CFA Charter signals the holders' commitment to professional excellence. As thought leaders, we collaborate with stakeholders to ensure adherence to ethical standards, better education for professionals, and to build market integrity. We are the leading voice for advocacy in the finance and investment industry in Nigeria. To partner with us or become our member, visit us at cfasocietynG.org for more details. CFA Society Nigeria, making finance a force for good.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's edition, the 5th edition of our quarterly leadership series. My name is Ibukun Oyedeji. I'm the president of the CFA Society Nigeria. Good leadership is key to the long-term success of every organization, and the quarterly leadership series was birthed to educate and train agile leaders through the inspiring lessons and wealth of leadership experience of our renowned guest speakers who are captain of industry. I recall in 2021, when we were preparing to launch the quarterly leadership series, in a tweet with Business Day, I shared the society's vision of training leaders who are well equipped to be decision makers, bold and fearless enough to manage uncertainties. And in that conversation, I shared our plan to host successful professionals across the globe who have dared to be different. Leaders who have a track record of notable achievements, challenging the status quo, and have contributed significantly to the growth of their various economies. If you have attended any of our previous editions, you can attest to the quality of speakers we have had the opportunity to feature on this platform. From Fola Adeola, OFR, the founder of Guarantee Trust, His Highness Khalifa Mahamadou Sanusi II, the 14th Emir of Kano and the former governor of the central bank. We have also had the opportunity to host Kala Harris, the vice chairman and managing director at Morgan Stanley, and most recently, Akin Daudu, the Citibank CEO for Sub-Saharan Africa. Today, we have the very rare privilege and honor of hosting Mr. Jim Ovia, CFR, Commander of the Federal Republic, who is the founder and the first managing director of Zenith Bank PLC. He is also currently the chairman of this great institution. Zenith Bank PLC is one of Africa's leading banks, listed on the London Stock Exchange and the Nigerian Stock Exchange, with over 24 billion in assets and shareholder funds of over $3 billion. These figures as at June 2022. It has operations not only in Nigeria and other West African countries, it also has sizable operations in London and Dubai. At this point, it's very important for me to state that Zenith Bank has been the full sponsor of our annual CFA Institute Research Challenge in Nigeria since inception, 2018-2019 edition. We currently have over 25 universities who are direct beneficiaries of this kind gesture as they compete in this research challenge. I want to use this opportunity to thank you, Chairman, who made this possible by emphasizing the need to educate and invest in the future professionals. Jim Ovia, CFR, is the founder and chancellor of the James Hope University, Lekki, Lagos, which was recently approved by the National University Commission to commence activities September 2023. He is also the founder of the James Hope College in Delta State. Through his philanthropy, the Jim Ovia Foundation, he has shown the importance he accords to good education. In support of the Nigerian youth, Jim Ovia Foundation offers scholarship to indigent students through the Mankind United to Support Total Education initiative. Most of the beneficiaries of the Jim Ovia Foundation scholarship are now accountants, business administrators, lawyers, engineers, doctors, to mention a few. He is the author of Africa Arise and Shine, published by Forbes book. The book, which encapsulates Zenith Bank's meteoric rise, details the secrets of success in doing business in Africa. He's an alumnus of the Harvard Business School, the University of Louisiana, and the Southern University, Louisiana. Jim Ovia, CFR, is a member of the World Economic Forum community of chairpersons and a champion of the forum's Edison Alliance. Sir, on behalf of the governor, of the Board of Governors and members of the CFA Society Nigeria, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to oblige us today. Now I'd like to introduce to you the moderators. Today, I've got Nadia Omotosho, CFA. She's a vice president at Iroko Capital. She's currently involved in she has over 10 years experience in holding different positions and which cuts across investment banking and asset management. Her sector purview over the years have ranged from financial services, manufacturing, agribusiness, and soft and hard infrastructure. Presently, she's actively involved in the Iroko fundraise for over 100 billion Iroko Capital Growth and Infrastructure Fund, which seeks to invest in enabling infrastructure within Nigeria. She has a bachelor's degree in economics from the University of Lagos and is a CFA charter holder. The second moderator for today is Akinola Shoemimo, CFA. He's the managing director and chief investment officer at Mango Asset Management. Prior to joining Mango, Ola spent 17 years investing in global, emerging, and frontier economies, most recently as a chief investment officer at EcoBank Asset Management with over $1 billion in assets under management. His career spans through some of the largest global investment management firms, which include Amundi, Legg Mason, and Citigroup. Ola earned his bachelor's degree in mathematics and computer from University of Nottingham, UK, an MBA from Imperial College London, and is a CFA charter holder. He also sits on various boards of financial and social impact firms. Before I hand over to the moderator, I'd want you to listen to our 1 minute video on who we are as a society.
We are professionals. We are impact-driven. We are CFA Society Nigeria, a member society of the CFA Institute Global Network of Societies. Our mission is to promote the highest standard of practice in the Nigerian financial services industry and provide a vibrant community for our members. The CFA Charter signals the holder's commitment to professional excellence. As thought leaders, we collaborate with stakeholders to ensure adherence to ethical standards, better education for professionals, and to build market integrity. We are the leading voice for advocacy in the finance and investment industry in Nigeria. To partner with us or become our member, visit us at cfasocietyng.org for more details. CFA Society Nigeria, making finance a force for good.
So thank you. The video just tells you all about who we are and what we do. Once again, thank you very much for joining today's call. Please sit back and enjoy this session as I hand over to the moderators. Ola, please could you take on from here?
Thank you, Ibuku, and good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's event, today's QLS event. Our guest today needs very little introduction. It's a privilege to have you with us today, sir, Mr. Jim Ovia, and welcome. As one of the founding fathers and captains of industry of modern banking and across Africa, it's great to have you join us today at the QLS event. I know we have one of the things that has happened recently has been your national conferment of the national honor, and I just want to congratulate you once again the very well-deserved honor that you've been shown by the president last week. Thank you for joining us today.
Please, can you put up his slides, please? Thank you.
Okay, if we hand over to you, sir, to go through the presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
Are we all connected now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. My very special pleasure for this invitation to speak to the team of CFA Society. Special good afternoon to you all. We'll be talking principally about the private sector initiative and how it propels businesses of economies. In this case, particularly Nigeria. And we all know the opportunities available in Nigeria today with regard to the role of private sector. Some of us are very serious, significant beneficiaries, and we feel very pleased for the opportunities that we had received over the past 3 decades. We say specifically 1990 during the military. Things really haven't changed so significantly. But I think many people in other economies probably were a little bit surprised that the Nigerian military gave the Nigerian youth, some of us in our 30s, opportunity to start banking businesses and got banking licenses. And so it was then. And of course, the military also gave opportunity to very many young people to set up other initiatives, airlines. We don't have Nigeria Airways now, but we do have private sector owned airlines. It was due to the fact that the private sector, the military, took the bold step to license, authorize establishment of airlines, banking industry, finance, and so on and so forth. What do we have now? Let's look at the economy of Nigeria, African countries, South Africa, and let's look at the GDP. Nigeria is 441 billion. South Africa is 420 billion. And Egypt is 404 billion. And Algeria is 168 billion. And Morocco, 133 billion. So as we look at those numbers, we could see where Nigeria ranks. Nigeria ranks very seriously right way on top. And probably because of the private sector initiative had grown the economy very significantly. Many individuals tend to think that probably because we have oil, and that's why, it's contributory. It's part of it also. That our GDP is high because of that. But the industries are also doing very, very well. But if we also look at other countries in the world, European countries, America, we could see the numbers are significantly different. United States over, which is the first that you see here, you see that they are in trillions of US dollars. China, about 17 trillion, Japan, 4.9 trillion, Germany, we have 4.2 trillion, United Kingdom, 3 trillion, and India has come very strongly. India wasn't that very rich 30 years ago. They certainly weren't. But what had happened? They have improved significantly. Their private sectors have grown significantly. France, higher than France, higher than Italy, and of course, Canada, 1.9 trillion. And Korea is also strong, 1.8 trillion. Now, what do we do in Nigeria to improve our GDP and our economy? Is to empower the private sector. Very straightforward, to empower the private sector. Hence, we also have to look at the ease of doing business. Our private sectors, are they able to do as well as the private sector in other countries? Not necessarily, not exactly. What is lacking in Nigeria? What is slowing down the private sector here? Is more of the policies, ease of doing business. We can also look at the ranking of ease of doing business of the world, or if you will, of maybe African countries. You could see Rwanda ranks number one, easily number one, in terms of ease of doing business. Then you now also look at other countries in Africa and comparison to where Nigeria is. Nigeria ranks very low, significantly very low. Rwanda is easily number one, followed by Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, and Nigeria ranks at the bottom of these countries in Africa. What do we mean by ease of doing business? How long does it take a young gentleman to set up and start a fintech business? What about the approval from the regulatory authorities? Whether you need approval from central bank or you need approval from other entities, you will see that it will take you more than 6 months to get those approvals. Whereas in Rwanda, it's more shorter time. We do know some fintech companies which were originally Nigerian-based that had set up their own structure in Rwanda, and it took just very few weeks to get that done. During our recent program in Rwanda, we were very impressed when their head of state was really very boastful that he would do it in 2 days, not 2 weeks, 2 days. And someone jokingly said maybe 2 hours. But we can't make those kind of positive statements, positive remarks in Nigeria. We know we cannot. But in Rwanda, they do, because they can achieve that kind of initiative because their government functionaries function very well in terms of various initiatives that you need to set up your organizations, and the opportunities you also need to pay the taxes, the right amount of the taxes, and you get the necessary approvals you need. That's what makes a big difference in terms of ease of doing business. Let's also look at how do we enable private sector through the ease of doing business. First, starting a business. dealing with construction permits, getting maybe electricity. You have to buy your own generator, which I mentioned in my book is BYOI, meaning build your own infrastructure. You have to build your own infrastructure, you know, and this is probably the only country that's doing so well economically by the private sector, yet you need to build your own infrastructure, BYOI. And other countries, it's not like that. You don't need to build your electricity. You don't need to build your roads. Truly, we build roads. As any bank, they build at Jose Adeogun and all that. I'm still maintaining it. We've been maintaining it for the past 12 years. We still maintain it. I don't know of any company that build and maintain roads and still run their businesses very successfully. Then the other issue has to do with, of course, the natural registration of the company. That is normal anywhere, but how long does it take you to register companies? Here in Nigeria, it takes weeks. It takes weeks. I am really underestimating if I say weeks. It might be months, including all the regulatory approval. Some of you who own a fintech company or setting up a fintech company will definitely know how long it takes to set up a fintech company, given that you've been able to receive all the necessary regulatory approvals. Yeah. And we also look at the companies that have done extremely very well in the innovation frontier, information technology that have propelled the world businesses. And if you look at the very big, largest, information technology companies that we have in the world, you have Apple Computer, Microsoft, Google, now Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta Structure, Facebook. What did they do that is different from what we are doing here? The only difference is the environment. Is the environment where they started their business. Let's take example, Apple Computers. Apple Computers started by Steve Jobs in the 70s. And now the total market cap of Apple Computer is 2.2 trillion US dollars, listed on NASDAQ. 2.2 trillion. Then you now have Microsoft. Microsoft started by Bill Gates and Paul Allen, have 1.7 trillion US dollars. 1.7 US dollars, also listed on NASDAQ. Then Google, now recently renamed Alphabet, is 1.3 US dollars, also listed on NASDAQ. Larry Page, the founder, and two of his friends. Then you move on to Amazon. We all know so much about Amazon. Amazon is 1.1 trillion US dollars. These amounts equate to or even surpass the economies of many African countries. And of course, they all surpass the size of the economy of Nigeria. We know that. Without any oil well. These are information technology companies. And of course, now let's go to Facebook. Facebook, Meta. And we know Mark Zuckerberg, a very young lad. The market cap of Facebook used to be twice the size of Nigeria's GDP, but now it's gone down significantly, obviously because of the issues they have with other competitors and the structure of Facebook. Now, if you go to Europe, is there any European company that had been able to compete with any of these American information technology company? The answer is no. Why not? Again, the structure of those economies again, and their ease of doing business. I remembered that when Mark Zuckerberg visited Paris a few years ago, and the prime minister of the country at that time, I think it was, I think the prime minister before Macron, and he had honestly told Mark Zuckerberg that he will not do as well in France if he started his business in France, because in France there were too many protests and there are too many rioting and too many protests. There are so many labor-related issues, labor unrest, that he will not do as well. If a French president could tell French people and Mark Zuckerberg that he wouldn't do as well if he was a French guy setting up a similar business in France. If a successful European country, their prime minister could say all that, you can also imagine what we will say in some African countries. So the environment, the country, the initiative, the support matters a lot. That's what makes a big difference, whether our companies, we do well here in Nigeria or some of these African countries. These are the issues that we have to look at very, 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 very seriously. Now, let's be a little bit kind to our young people who have been able to set up some information technology company, fintech. We all know about the success stories of Flutterwave, OPay, InterSwitch, CUDA, Paystack. They've done successfully very well. These are companies we should all applaud very significantly. I'm even proud to say and congratulate them that some of them have been awarded a national award very recently because of their successes in their various endeavors. And I am very confident when some of these fintech companies are able to list in the Nigerian Stock Exchange or New York Stock Exchange or London Stock Exchange, it's going to be in billions. Hence, they are called unicorn. They are unicorn because Flutterwave is valued at about over $3 billion US. That's Flutterwave. OPay is about $2 billion US. InterSwitch, $1 billion. And CUDA, maybe 500 million. And Paystack valuation is $200 million. Not listed in any stock exchange yet. Stripe of US had bought Paystack for $200 million US. But certainly, it's going to be much more valuable than that. Much more valuable. These are the organizations, these are the fintech companies we feel so proud to celebrate. We feel so proud to celebrate. And I think we all should continue to encourage them the best way we can, either as government or as private sector people. Okay? Indeed, the private sector is a key engine of growth for any free market economy. Definitely, there's no doubt about that. Entrepreneurs can leverage capital and innovation to create wealth and expand opportunities. The government needs to create an enabling environment for the private sector to thrive. Regulations are required for control, but they should not stifle innovation and creativity. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for the opportunity and for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that enlightening presentation. A lot of gems in that presentation that we can take away as we think about about Nigeria, about investing in Nigeria and globally, actually. Now, whilst we wait for some questions to be put up on the chat group, my co-moderator and I, Nadia, would perhaps we start with a few questions on our own that we have, and then go to the audience for some more questions.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for that presentation. It was very insightful. I think the first thing that I would like to touch on, you mentioned the role of information and technology in driving economies. India, as you mentioned, is an economy that leveraged on growth in technology. You've mentioned a few of our companies that are achieving unicorn status. And ICT is one of the fastest growing sectors in the Nigerian economy. Now, we've seen an overlap or interplay where the government is putting things in place to enable that sector. Policies are being developed. We are seeing, for example, Securities and Exchange Commission issuing licenses to accommodate these new fintech companies that are coming up. Now, one of the challenges that is emerging is this huge brain drain that we're experiencing. Everyone is moving out. Technology is one of the areas where our youngest and brightest are being poached. So I suppose the question is, on the one hand, we have technology that has been driving and contributing, but at the same time, we're experiencing this mass exodus. Where do you think that leaves us, and how do you think we can turn that around and turn that to our advantage?
Okay, I'm writing all this down. Let me take all the questions we have, then I'll speak to all of them.
Thank you.
Please.
Perhaps I have a question that's probably more about the global macro environment. You know, over the last decade, over the last 15 or so years, we've been in a period of 0 to low interest rates globally. Many of the newly founded technology companies, many firms have never operated in an environment of rising interest rates, rising inflation. It would be great to get some advice from you, that from a veteran such as yourself, who has seen many cycles and many economic environments, and perhaps share some advice with these new founders as to how to navigate such a new environment.
Very good. I've noted that down. Third question, please.
Should we just quickly see if we have anything from the audience? Just give us a second to take a few questions from the audience and we'll put it forth. Okay, I think we can start with these two questions.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon again. And the first question has to do with brain drain. A number of our youths, they are always getting jobs in Canada, UK, and even in the US, or even other African countries. The reason is simple. The opportunities there are much more rewarding to them. And some of the youth that go to Canada, some go up there to continue their education, and at the same time, they also work. That's number one reason. UK, the same thing. Many of them move over to UK to complete their master's degree PhD program and also work. In Nigeria, could they do their master's degree program and work and pay? I don't think they will be able to earn enough money to fund their education here while working here? I don't think so. That's one reason why many of them go to Canada, go to UK, go to the US. That's number one reason. There could be other reasons. If you talk to some of the young boys and girls, they will tell you there are numerous reasons, but this one particular one, we've been able to lay our hands on, both in the bank, both in information technology company, fintech company that we also run. That's the major reason. And we lose staff every week. And that's the reason why they all want to go abroad to improve their skill and also earn some money. Then the next question, the target was the specific industry, information technology, ICT. That's not all. You forgot our medical doctors and our nurses. Thousands of our doctors, they travel out every week. Thousands travel out every week, which means Nigeria's education and training is super good. Were they not good, they will not be able to go to UK, get a job, or go to US. Many of them are in the US, they are in the UK, yet some people tend to think Nigeria's educational standard is not good enough. It is good enough. They go to UK, they go to US and compete and also rival those they met there and do extremely very well. When I launched my book in New York, Africa Rise and Shine, we received about 12 Nigerian medical doctors in that program who attended without any much serious announcement. We're pleased to receive them. And we're all in New York. We're not saying 12 Nigerian doctors in the US, just only in New York. Actually in Manhattan. In Manhattan, there were many of them. We were so impressed. So we have Nigerian doctors, Nigerian nurses that are able to also travel out easily, not just those in fintech or those in ICT or information technology. Next question had to do with interest rates, whether in a regime of high interest rate, how could many startup businesses, SME businesses, small, medium scale enterprises, how could they really survive? That's a very good question. If you have the right business initiative, whether the interest rate was low or high, you will survive. It's a matter of the initiative that you have, the business ideas that you have. And you will see that many people are taking on some initiatives that will propel their businesses. Not just because, yes, I agree, if interest rate is low, you are likely to do much better than when interest rate is high. And hence some succeed by going to raise equity as opposed to debt. You are looking at startup business SMEs where the individuals try to raise debt, high interest rates. But you should also look at many of these fintech companies. They are all busy raising equity. So they can raise equity without even borrowing at all. Over to you. Next questions, if any.
Thank you for those answers, sir. There's a question from Demola Akinwale, and he references the BYOI you mentioned, and he said, and he asks, what are your thoughts around decentralizing critical power infrastructure to drive economic growth in Nigeria?
Centralizing economic.
Decentralizing power.
No, what's the question?
So he was asking, or he's asking, what are your thoughts around decentralizing critical power infrastructure to drive economic growth in Nigeria?
We have already decentralized power distribution. I thought that's what it is. Individual organizations did not own their power supplies. They do set up private power supplies because the decentralized electricity program has not really been successful. I don't know whether that answers your questions.
Yes, it does.
Yes.
As an investment society, one of the questions here from Oluwasegun is that where and what would you invest in 2023?
2023, that's next year.
Yeah.
And next year, hopefully, we expect that the election for 2023 will be very successful, and one of the candidates should win, and we're going to have a new president. It depends on the manifesto of the presidential candidate, what he intends to do, how he's going to guide the country, and in terms of many initiatives, security, power, that will determine in which area I will likely invest. So far, for the past 3 decades, we've been privileged enough, lucky enough, blessed enough. We are some of the lucky ones that our businesses that we have, banking, finance, have done tremendously so well until we have a new president. And how that president is able to tackle the issue of security issue of power supply, and purely and organizing the people of Nigeria, that will determine what additional investment one will do.
Okay, I have one from the audience here from Abel Essien. And the question is, government policies have a great role to play in the fortunes of the private sector and by extension, the economy. As we look towards 2023, what macroeconomic policy issues would you recommend to the incoming government to accelerate the development of the nation?
That's a very good question. Microeconomic issues, very important. And again, I'm glad that we all accept and realize the fact that the policies of a government makes tremendous difference whether the private sector could do well or not. I give an example of France, where the French Prime Minister owned up that Mark Zuckerberg, that founded Facebook, will not do as well in France compared to America. And he gave the reasons. And their policy in France could not encourage Mark Zuckerberg or Facebook to do well. So I'm glad that the questioner recognized the fact that the policy of government means a lot. It means a lot, whether the private sector does well or not. Over to you.
So on the back of that, I have one more question related. It's from Chukuma Edoziano. With respect to Nigeria's rank in the ease of doing business status, how can we, the private sector, ensure that processes are streamlined to make it better? Can we lobby the government?
Very good question. There's lobbying government is very important. It's allowed, even in some of the most privileged, most developed countries, like in the US. US is a profession to be a lobbyist. It's a profession to be a lobbyist. Who do they lobby? They lobby the senators. They lobby committee members. They lobby them and influence them Our government need to come up with a policy that will favor the private sector and various industries. I'm sure you have heard so much about IRA.
Yes.
Yes, IRA is a very strong lobby group. Very, very strong, and they're very rich. They also influence governments. They have to influence government. In Nigeria, it should be encouraged that we should have lobbyists to lobby government, the senators, the House of Reps, to lobby them and influence them to do things that will favor the private sector.
So I suppose one of the things that comes to mind is one of the institutions that feed our economy would be the educational sector. This is where we train young individuals to then go on to be productive members of society and then provide a productive workforce that go in and work. I know that this is education is something you're very passionate about, and when our president of the CFA Society was going through your profile, she had mentioned your many endeavors, including James Hope, school and now soon to be university. What do you think the private sector can do or how do you think the private sector can be better involved in saving this educational infrastructure that is decaying in our society, because it has a very huge impact on the quality of workforce that we are adding in our economy?
Yeah, okay. The private sector should continue to do what the private sector have been doing in the past: financing, supporting, encouraging, and also demonstrating philanthropy in the area of education. And I will also say that so many years ago, you do not have private sector that have the money, the resources to sponsor schools at all. You didn't really probably have them. We probably didn't even have private universities many years ago. I'll probably say more than 2 decades ago, there were no private universities, no private secondary schools. Can't think of any serious private secondary schools in Lagos. What we know of in Lagos that were great schools where you have the universities of the secondary school. You have like Ovia College, Bariga College, and all that. That's where some of the great gentlemen and women today that eventually became super palm secretary. Those are the schools they went to. They didn't go to private secondary schools in Nigeria. They were none. They were none. The King's College, Ibobi College, and so on and so forth. Apologies for those that I didn't mention that school. I went to a village secondary school myself, Eka Grammar School, Abo. So those are the schools. And who owned those schools at that time? They were owned by either state government or federal government. In fact, all of them were owned by federal government at that time. The standard of teaching was very uniform. Very, very uniform. So there were no private schools. We didn't have individuals that can afford setting up a secondary school or a university. So asking what the private sector can do now, what had happened before years ago when we left high school, went to university? How did we come up? It's the federal government primary school, federal government secondary school, not private schools at all. None. There were none. You can check your record. So it's only more recently that the private sector are investing in education directly because they can afford it. And they also have realized that the government standard for secondary school, university is dropping very low. So private sector is fitting into that vacuum. So they are doing what they are supposed to do. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Just Africa is blessed with a young, large, talented population. And we've, over the last 30, 50 years, we've seen different economic models, the Chinese model, Singapore model, the German economic model of growth. Which type of economic growth model would you reckon is best suited to Africa? You know, one that can harness this large young population that we have and hopefully help us grow our way from a low income economy or country or continent rather to one of the richer or middle income economies.
Okay, very good question. Now, the truth of the matter has to do with the fact that there was really nothing terribly wrong with the educational standard we had when we went to primary school here in Nigeria, secondary school, because I remember vividly when I visited the US for the first time for my university education. In class, I used to tell them when it will get flooded in Galveston. Galveston is in Texas. And it used to be allowed. How would I know? And I just came from Nigeria. I did it in geography at the Cal Grammar School, Abo. Our geography teacher, who used to tell us which places in the US gets flooded at a certain time of the year. Like during this particular time in the past few weeks, it's been flooded in Florida. And it's been flooded in Galveston, Texas. It happens like that every other year. I knew that then. Whereas some Americans in some American schools didn't know what I was talking about. And yet we continue to criticize that our educational standard wasn't good enough. It was super good. We might say it's going down now, maybe. And James Hope College Secondary School, they do the various UK exams. IGCSE, I think many of you probably know if you have children, go to school there, IGCSE.
Yes.
And James Hope College Secondary School, they beat many students in the UK. In fact, the British Embassy normally awards them a lot of medals. They all have their A-star of the same exam that is offered to UK students in IGCSE. So there's really nothing wrong with the standard of our education. If it's well organized, now the private sector are taking over, they are playing a significant role. But you may be talking about the secondary school, primary school of the local, probably, if you will, some states government, or if you're talking about some local government area, because local government is in charge of primary schools. The state governments are in charge of the secondary schools, and so on and so forth. Now, it depends on the state that you are talking about. Some states are more serious than other states. That's just all. The same thing you are going to find out if you go to the US. There are some states in the US where some students in some secondary school, they don't know any jack. They don't. Whereas some states, their secondary school students are high flyers. Same thing in Nigeria. Same thing. So it's not a matter of the Russian model or the American model or the English model. Even the English model, that's what we copy. I just gave an example of James Hope Secondary School. That's the model we have. And they are doing very well. Over to you. Any further questions?
Yes, sir, we have a lot. So I have a question from the audience, from Sikiru Salami. Mr. Chairman, sir, you founded Zenith Bank during the military era at a time when economic and political hopelessness was at its peak. There was even no clear pathway forward to democratic dispensation that could have presented some ray of hope for private sector growth. Yet, you chose to start a bank to fund growth machines amidst these uncertainties. Why, sir? What were you seeing that others weren't seeing? And I think this is very relevant in light of the brain drain that we're seeing, and for those of us that are still on ground. So over to you, sir.
This is a very good question. In 1990, when we started Zenith Bank, that first 5 years, 1990, 91, 92 to 95, I think Babangida, General Babangida was the head of state at that time. Then, if you're talking about brain drain, a lot of Nigerians left Nigeria to US, to UK, a lot. I don't know how many. Is it as bad as now? I do not have the accurate statistics, but a lot. To the extent that the military government, they took up a paid advert on NTA at that time. There was no other private-owned TV station. NTA was the network. They took up a paid advert to discourage Nigerians from leaving. And it had to do with the advert of Andrew Checkout. I don't know how many of you remember such advert. It depends on how old you were at that time, where a young man carries like a briefcase and had it on his shoulder, and he rained all kind of abusive language on the country, that the water doesn't run. He said electricity doesn't run. And Nigeria was anything that was bad. That was the advert. And therefore, he was telling his friend that he had to check out now. So we used to call him Check Out Andrew. So, and it was very popular advert then. So the government is not even coming up with any advert to discourage the youth from checking out. But at that time, we had an advert to discourage the youth from checking out. So are you saying they are checking out more now compared to then? I don't think so. It's been like this. It's been like this. It's just that we all need to celebrate, those of my age, is that the military never bothered any of us. They never did. They didn't bother our businesses. They allowed our businesses to perform well. And that's the truth. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that. I've learned something new. Check out Andrew. I'll be sure to use that phrase. I think we are approaching the end, so we will take the last 2 or 3 questions. I'll take this. It's from Dr. Ugochukwu Abisilem. I want to take a question from Celestine Akidi. Considering the growing infrastructure funding gap in Nigeria and the huge role infrastructure plays in driving critical economic growth, how can the federal government further incentivize the private sector to attract more private funding into infrastructure?
Very good question. Very, very good. In fact, very recently, I understand that the government is encouraging the private sector to build roads, and they will write off the exact amount of building roads from the taxes they would have paid. I'm not very clear on that, but I'm going to read that up again. There should be enabling tax laws that will allow you build roads, which is infrastructure development, and you write it off from the taxes you have paid. That's one way of contributing. Next question, please.
Oh, apologies, I didn't realize I was on mute.
Okay.
Do you have any questions to ask Mr. Ovia?
No, I think just one question from my side, and there are a lot of budding entrepreneurs and young business people or people that have dreams of starting their own businesses, and they look at you, sir, and how you've managed to build this global enterprise, and as you've said and encouraged that when you started Zenith Bank in the very early 90s, the environment actually doesn't seem that it was that much worse than today. But you took that bold step to step out of, I guess, your comfort zone at the time, with all the risks and whatnot, and go and set up this enterprise. What would you say in terms of handing over the baton to the next generation? How would you say, or what are the things you think captains of industry such as yourself, and perhaps even through the federal government, do to encourage young entrepreneurs to sort of take this baton and drive on the next generation of entrepreneurs?
If your question is, how do we advise our successors? How do we advise the young entrepreneurs of what to do, whether to build their own infrastructure or not to build? Which is the question.
Yes, well, that's part of the part, whether or not they should build their own infrastructure, take that leap of faith, go out there and build these new businesses and take do what's necessary to make their vision or dreams come true. Exactly.
Build your own infrastructure. If you BYOI, if you have to survive, build your own infrastructure until the government is able to install, build the necessary infrastructure to make us do well. Electricity still needs to improve to the standard that the youth would love to have. It still needs to improve to that level. It has not. Yes. Then what did we do? During the time we started our businesses, we didn't have electricity in the way and manner the youth want it to be. We built our own infrastructure, and we're still building them. Any further question? If none, may I say special thank you all for listening to me and for giving me the opportunity to air my views. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to speak with us. Yami, would you like to say the vote of thanks?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Chuka, are you with us? Sorry, sir. Chuka?
Yes, I can hear you. I was muted.
Yeah, okay. Apologies. Handing over to you. All right.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I would just give a recap of the presentation, and it's really insightful. And you know, basically the nuggets or the I learned from this is that, one, you know, many of the big businesses have thrived because they've operated in enabling environment, and these companies have grown to be, you know, way bigger than many economies. So that's a very, very good insight. So the region matters a lot. Then we zoom into Nigeria. We've had some success stories, but the reality is that these companies have to succeed, even if it means building, your own infrastructure. That's a new terminology I've learned, BYOI. So that's very that's very critical. And in creating that enabling environment, tax laws can actually help to soften the burden of the BYOI. And the last point is education. Education, creating quality people that can drive innovation. So and our speaker, Mr. Ovia, is a very strong advocate for education. So that's very useful. So at this point, I would like to thank Mr. Ovia for speaking today, as well as supporting all the activities of the CFA Society Nigeria. I also want to thank the participants for joining in and listening and contributing and asking questions. You are the reason we do this. We want to build, we want to develop leaders. I also want to thank the societies, those behind the scene, ensuring that this event is successful. Then there's someone else I'd like to also thank, Marie. Marie has been very critical to coordinating and, bridging the CFA Society as well as Mr. Ovia. Even though she's not a man, she has gone the extra mile to make this happen. I want to thank you, Ola, as well as Nadia, and the Board of Governors, as well as the Board of Trustees for also supporting us. For the participants, I would like you to stay tuned for the next quarterly leadership series. That's for Q4. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all, and good afternoon again.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
If you've made a decision to aim for a long-term and successful finance career, taking the Chartered Financial Analyst CFA exam and studying the curriculum is an excellent way to ensure you have a strong knowledge base and top-notch skills. Are you ready to take the bold step to invest in yourself? CFA Society Nigeria is at your disposal, promoting the highest standards of investment practice in Nigeria. As an affiliate of CFA Institute, CFA Society Nigeria seeks to promote the highest standards of investment practice in Nigeria and to provide a vibrant community in which its members and other key players in the investment industry can interact and grow. When you have the CFA Charter, you're globally recognized. Take advantage today by writing the CFA exam and joining us at CFA Society Nigeria. For more information, visit us at cfasocietyn.org. CFA Society Nigeria, making finance a force